Well, hello again, everyone, and thanks you for joining us for this edition of Alaska Weather on Sunday, 26th day of September 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. And up first, hazardous weather graphics. No hazardous weather graphics would be the way to describe it. No watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere around the state for the next day or so. And so from there, just jumping into satellite images, looping them together, we've got something that looks like this. Low pressure southwest of the Queen Charlotte Islands, pushing a frontal boundary up to the Queen Charlotte Islands and spreading clouds and a little moisture into the southern southeast coast. Strongest winds, heaviest rain are back down toward the Queen Charlotte with gusts 40 to 50 miles an hour. And a little bit of light rain now reaching these southern areas of the Panhandle. Otherwise, pretty dry day up to the north. Showers pretty much ended earlier on. And lots of sunshine across southern Alaska. Some lingering clouds over toward the eastern border, eastern Copper River Basin, Wrangell Mountains, maybe an isolated snow shower or two. And that pattern extends right up the eastern border there, either side of it, all the way to the eastern Arctic coast. But west of there, mostly clear skies, especially southern Alaska. As you see Bristol Bay and the Pribilof seeing some sun this afternoon, both St. Paul and St. George there, kind of the calm before the storm. But now cirrus spreading into the Pribilof Islands. High stuff, 18,000 feet. But that's going to continue. Ceiling's obviously going to continue to lower and thicken throughout the remainder of the afternoon and tonight. And the front having passed Adak, they had gusts upwards of 40 to 50 miles an hour. Atka seeing gusts 30 to 40 miles an hour. So not really a big wind producer in those two locations yet. Rainfall not all that heavy. Adak picked up about a quarter of an inch with the front. And eastern Aleutians starting to see the northwest winds die off, and the southeast winds should start to pick up if they haven't already. Same thing for the Pribilof Island areas. And low center back out near Shimianatu. Otherwise, moisture moving in, or leftover moisture from what was a trough, still is a trough. They're bringing, brought some rain, about 0.13 of an inch to Nome that ended earlier this morning, and just some showers of rain or snow extending across much of the northwest coast. Western Arctic coast there, but mostly down across in toward the lower Yukon River Valley areas, but not too much in the Delta. Whatever fell is pretty darn light, but you can see breaking out the sunshine there right around the Bethel area on down into Togiak, Dillingham, King Salmon, and Kodiak Island. Pretty breezy northwest winds, resulting in clear skies there with gusts of 35 miles an hour at Akiak, 35 miles an hour at Kodiak State Airport, and gusts close to 40 miles an hour out of the east-northeast at Valdez. The temperature rise to 50 degrees this afternoon and into the mid-40s at Seward with north winds gusting to 32 miles per hour. And rolling that again, you can see those clouds are kind of dissipating there as they roll up the Yukon River there, and really not much expected as that moves inland. As far as moisture goes. Otherwise, weak high pressure up over the eastern interior there, and then upper level trough responsible for the lingering clouds and snow showers over toward the eastern border. And that'll eventually end, it should. And then the rain on the increased southern Panhandle, wind and rain coming into the central Aleutians there with a low farther to the west. And for tonight, that advances into the Alaska Peninsula and into the Pribilofs during the evening hours and overnight period, with a chance of rain reaching the southwest coast late tonight. Otherwise, weak low pressure over the western Brooks Range there, DeLong Mountains, keeps up snow showers possible, light snow showers across that entire area, all the way down maybe into the Yukon Delta. But whatever falls there will be quite light, more of a mixed precip condition there at sea level for St. Lawrence Island And again, light amounts, wind's not a factor at all up that way, but pretty windy there along the Aleutians for those west winds, that tighter gradient just on the south side of the 987 millibar low. Winds diminish Kodiak Island and begin to diminish overnight tonight for Resurrection Bay and Prince William Sound, channeled areas, Valdez. Winds will drop off pretty good probably this evening, definitely after midnight. Light winds elsewhere, dry conditions eastern interior, risk of a snow shower, Wrangell Mountains, rain, southern panhandle. And for tomorrow, that low center staying down by the Queen Charlottes, that'll keep shower possibilities pretty good, mostly southern and central southeast coast. Sunny skies, southern Alaska, eastern interior, mostly sunny to variably cloudy, maybe some snow flurries with a very weak trough from the central Arctic coast down into the Kobuk Valley. Otherwise, pretty good northern Bering Sea system holding together and keeping it wet for the Pribilof Islands. Gusty winds, Adak and Atka out of the northwest with showers, wind and rain, Alaska Peninsula spreading into Bristol Bay and southwest Kodiak Island in the afternoon. And moving ahead to Tuesday, another system comes out of the Russian Far East. They're spreading rain and snow, not much in the way of wind, pretty weak system, usually coming off the landmass. They don't have a lot of moisture to work with, but look for some rain and snow. St. Lawrence Island into the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula area, and just grazing the northwest coast there with some light snow possibilities. Warm front rains, though, will extend down into the Pribilof Islands during the afternoon. Aleutians looking good. Light winds, light west-northwest breezes there with dry conditions and maybe some clearing. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula. Kind of just threw a rain shower in there on the Unalaska Island area just to make the map interesting. And some light rain possible for Kodiak Island with the main system now kicking off to the east. That'll spread rain into the southern southeast coast during the evening hours on Tuesday, especially the south coast, but not too bad up to the north. Partly sunny skies. Lows for tonight, 40s for the Panhandle, mid-teens for the Copper River Basin, in the 20s everywhere else except Kodiak Island. Lows in the mid-30s, staying above freezing. Highs tomorrow near 40, Copper River Basin, and lower 40s to near 50 across the remainder of the state. Coolest in the Kuskokwim Valley, and in the 50s there for the Panhandle. Lows staying in the mild 40s for the southeast coast, 10 to 15, Copper River Basin, 20 to 25. So sitting in Matanuska Valley, around Willow, could be around 20 or 18 degrees for your low Tuesday morning. Otherwise, upper 20s to lower 30s, but staying in the 40s for Kodiak Island, followed by highs near 50 at Kodiak and upper 40s to lower 50s there along the Kenai Peninsula coast. Upper 30s Copper River Basin, and upper 40s to mid-50s for the Panhandle. Lows along the Arctic coast in the 20s, otherwise 10 to 15 or 5 to 15 north slope into the Brooks Range. 15 to 25 eastern interior, western interior in the lower 30s. Milder for St. Lawrence Island, where it'll be in the lower 40s tomorrow. Highs near freezing for the Arctic coast and the north slope into the Brooks Range. 30s to lower 40s central interior, followed by highs 15 to 20, or followed by lows 15 to 25. And in the 20s for the Arctic coast, and then highs in the 30s or mid-30s to lower 40s over the interior and cooler north of the Brooks Range. Lows tonight for the Aleutians in the mid-40s, followed by highs in the upper 40s to lower 50s, followed by lows 40 for the Pribilofs, otherwise mildest out towards Shemya, followed by highs in the 50s once again.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
For Monday morning, IFR, northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, through the strait into the northwest coast, northern Seward Peninsula, Selawik, Kobuk Valley, up across the central Brooks Range to the eastern Arctic coast. VFR from the extreme eastern Arctic coast there southward, all the way to the Gulf of Alaska, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Islands. Marginal VFR, Copper River Basin, and the 40-mile country there, eastern Alaska Range, on up to just north of Eagle. Otherwise, good VFR all the way down until you reach the southern panhandle there and get some lower stuff, and some IFR with the system. Southern Bering Sea, most of the Aleutians, right up to near the Pribilofs. And in the afternoon, we'll see that area expands and advances eastward there, right across the Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay up to the southwest coast. Marginal VFR for the Aleutian chain. And almost VFR there for the far western Aleutians. Some IFR left up over the northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island to Wales, Tin City. IFR, Arctic coast. Marginal VFR extending southward into the Kobuk Valley, western Koyukuk Valley. And otherwise, interior Alaska, VFR, some marginal VFR over the panhandle. That'll be mostly in the south. I'm not so sure about that northern patch. And for the following morning, Tuesday, now we've got IFR up there for Lincoln Island Glacier Bay, otherwise marginal VFR. IFR for Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, eastward there, and then northward across the Kobuk Valley and central eastern North Slope and Gulf Coast, all looking at IFR conditions. With the VFR, upper Yukon Valley and the flats there, all of southern Alaska. Marginal VFR trying to get into Kachemak Bay, but makes it into Kamishak Bay and Iliamna and the Iliamna Lake area there. For the afternoon Tuesday, good VFR, southern Alaska. And for the Yukon Flats area, actually north of the White Mountains there, on up, marginal VFR at the IFR for the central eastern North Slope, central eastern Arctic coast. Marginal VFR, distinct lack of IFR out over the Bering Sea with mostly marginal conditions expected there from the St. Lawrence Island area. Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island marginal, and Prince William Sound though VFR, and marginal VFR just along or off the eastern North Gulf Coast, but covering all of the Panhandle. Passes, Anaktuvuk, VFR. Adigan, same forecast. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR flying there. Rainy VFR. Windy, same forecast. Isabel, same forecast. VFR for Mentasta. VFR for Tanita. VFR for Portage. VFR for Chilkoot and White. Freezing levels 2 to 8,000 feet there across the southeast coast, and 2 to 8,000 feet there across the southern Bering Sea and Aleutians. Otherwise, 2,000 feet or less over mainland Alaska there. And for icing, areas of light to isolated moderate rime icing with the system coming into Pribilof, Fox Islands, actually improving there during the afternoon with the best chance over the Alaska Peninsula. And some icing chances also for the southeast coast, mainly central and southern areas. And moving on to the jet stream. Got 70 knots cutting across southern Alaska there, diving off to the southeast over the Gulf of Alaska. Otherwise, the main jet south of the Aleutians and well south of the Panhandle, 9,000 feet, showing low pressure there, pushing into Bristol Bay, western Bristol Bay. So 20 to 35 knot winds on the north side of that system. 45 knot northwesterlies coming across eastern Aleutians tomorrow. And then southerlies at about 35 or so, narrow band there for Kodiak Island. Otherwise, pretty light and variable everywhere else around the state, with several upper level lows making for a general trough of low pressure across the area, but wind flow becoming a little more westerly aloft over southern Alaska. But at 3,000 feet, we've got good southeast winds, south to southeast, coming up toward the Trinity Islands, southwest Kodiak. At 45 knots, turn east and then northeast, east-northeast 45 for the Pribilof, swinging around to the north at about 50 to 55 knots from the central Aleutians southward. High pressure over the interior, making for light wind conditions there. Same thing for the southeast coast, light winds, strongest winds down to the south. Arctic coast, light winds as well. Taking a look at turbulence. Possible light turbulence, small aircraft, eastern Arctic coast below 4,000 feet. Otherwise, Aleutians, AKwx to False Pass, considerable moderate chop below 8,000 feet, also along the Alaska Peninsula. After the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Hangar Flying. My name is Mary O'Connor, and I'm with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation. This evening, I have with me Tom George, who is the Alaska representative of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Hi, Tom.
Good evening, Mary. Pleasure to be with you.
Tom, we understand that there are some charting changes taking place for one of the well-known passes that's used by pilots in Alaska. Can you give us an overview of this pass and its location?
I'd be happy to. The route we're talking about is the route from Anchorage to McGrath across a section of the Alaska Range. And while if the weather in our aircraft is up to just getting up to altitude and going straight across, that's the most efficient way to do it. But if either weather or aircraft capability or the reason we're making the trip keeps us lower, we've got to find a route through the Alaska range to make this flight. And I'd like to provide some definitions to help with this discussion. And I've not been able to find a true aviation mountain pass definition, but I did find this from World Landforms. Mountain pass is the highest portion of a path through the mountain range. The highest portion of the route is also the lowest route that can be traveled between mountains on either side. So we both have the pass giving us the high point, but it is part of a route to get us through a set of mountains or hills terrain. What the FAA provides is a mountain pass chart symbol that tells us where that high point is, but it doesn't tell us anything about the actual route itself.
Thank you for that definition and clarification of those terms. Now that we know exactly what we're talking about, can you show us the routes that we're going to be addressing?
So to zoom in on the central Alaska range a little bit more, the orange route that we're seeing here would take you through Rainy Pass, which is the higher route, and also through more precipitous terrain. So there is an alternate route through Ptarmigan Pass, and that's where we're going to see the changes to the names if people are looking to fly that route. And let me give you a little more background on the history of that. This is a document from the 1930s, 1934, that talked about flying through the Alaska range. And this is what they had to say about Rainy Pass. The backbone of the Alaska range is reached at Rainy Pass, which is of moderate elevation, very narrow with many sharp turns, and should never be flown on account of violent downdrafts and the fact that if cloudiness is encountered in the pass, it is impossible to turn around. They also went on to talk about the alternative route, known as Ptarmigan Pass, with a U shape to the south of the airway, 2 to 3 miles wide with no sharp turns so that it could be flown safely when ceilings are below the summit of the mountains and still be possible to turn airplanes around in the pass if necessary. So these are both very long passes of very long standing, and that advice about Rainy Pass probably was pretty good advice given the nature of the aircraft that they were flying in those days.
This historical perspective is fascinating, and it is interesting to know that these passes have been used and documented for a long time. So our beloved Ptarmigan Pass is the one that's being renamed and re-identified on the chart. Can you show us what these changes are going to look like on the charts and what pilots should expect to see?
I'd be happy to. The magic date is August the 12th, 2021. And before that time, the chart, as it's actually run today, still shows Rainy Pass as it always has, no change there. The location that historically was called Ptarmigan Pass has been changed to Hell's Gate by the FAA, since that's the actual official place name for that location. What's not on the chart at all is the actual mountain pass, the high point along the route, which is shown with the orange star here. So after August 12th, what we're going to see is Houston Pass, which is the proper USGS name of that location, depicted on the sectionals, on the McGrath sectional, and Hell's Gate will remain on the charts, but as a VFR checkpoint to allow pilots to have some reference as they're flying through that area.
This is very helpful. With a VFR checkpoint, pilots can also increase their situational awareness and use this point to communicate with other pilots. So both of these passes, Rainy and Houston, will get pilots through the Alaska range. How do these routes differ, and is there a reason why pilots might prefer to use one over the other?
Well, going back to look at the trace of these routes now on a Google Earth background so we can look at terrain rather than just topography. The orange route, again, is the route through Rainy Pass. And the actual elevation of Rainy Pass is 3,524 feet. This is not going to be, these elevations won't be on the charts originally, but before the end of the year, FA is telling us that they're going to add the actual pass elevation not only to these, but many other passes in the state of Alaska. In contrast, Houston Pass, the elevation is 2,749, and what was shown as Ptarmigan Pass, now Hell's Gate Canyon, is 2,200 feet approximately. So the difference between Rainy and Houston is 775 feet in terms of vertical elevation, another 550 feet difference between Hell's Gate Canyon and the Houston Pass. So knowing those values when you're flight planning and as you're starting to fly these routes is very useful information, so that if you're encountering ceilings before you get to the pass that aren't going to let you get through the pass, you've got an early indication that this might be a good time to turn around and exercise plan B. So yeah, I think in this case, we've got some new place names to become familiar with. And as you mentioned, not only is it useful for knowing about these in terms of our strategic tackling of these routes, but also we need to use these place names as we're making CTAF calls to reduce the risk of mid-air collision while we're flying in this confined terrain. So hopefully everybody will get their charts updated with this chart cycle, either paper or electronic, and use these new place names so that we're all singing off the same sheet of music as we're happily flying through either of these passes.
Tom, thank you so much for explaining these changes, and thank you for your work with the Mountain Pass Working Group. I appreciate your time being on Hangar Flying, and in addition, we'd like to thank the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association for allowing you to be here.
My pleasure.
Thanks also to Alaska Public Media for allowing us to bring you Hangar Flying, and thank you to the National Weather Service for sharing their time. Have a good evening, everyone.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Looking at the marine forecast here, Lincoln Island Glacier Bay, north winds 25 knots for small craft advisories with gale force gusts of 40 knots, much like today, and north 15 for Clarence Strait. For Clarence Strait northwest at 10, Stevens Passage north at 15, south coast north winds 15 to 20 knots, and northwest winds 15 to 20 knots on the north coast. And the outlook for, Monday, Tuesday, small craft advisories out along the coast south at 30 knots, 10-foot seas, southeast 25 on the north coast with 14-foot seas, and Lincoln Isle, Glacier Bay, northern inner channels north at 15, southeast 15 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, southeast winds 25 knots with 8-foot seas. Cook Inlet, north winds 10 knots for the day Monday, seas 2 feet. Prince William Sound, north 15 with 3-foot seas. And small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, northwesterlies 25 knots, northwest 20 for Kamishak Bay, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots for the North Gulf Coast. And for Tuesday, Prince William Sound, northeast winds 20 knots, 3-foot seas. Northern Cook Inlet, northeast at 15 with 4-foot seas. Small craft advisory south of the Forelands there with northerlies at 25 knots. Northeast 30 knots for Kamishak Bay. Gale warnings for the Barren Islands, northeast 35. And the North Gulf Coast, gale warnings northeasterlies, 30 to 35 knots, 13 to 14-foot seas. Kodiak Island, west-southwest, 15 to 20 knots tomorrow, 4 to 6-foot seas. And from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, winds will be out of the south at 30 knots, 8 to 11-foot seas. On the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, southeast at 30. Small craft advisories, Bristol Bay, for east winds at 25 knots. Those turn north at 25 knots for Bristol Bay on Tuesday with seas at about 6 feet. Otherwise, gale warnings, Alaska Peninsula, especially on the Pacific side, for northwest winds 30 to 35 knots, 10 to 12-foot seas. And from Sitkinak to Castle Cape on up the east side of Kodiak Island, north winds 30 knots, 12-foot seas. Shelikof Strait northeast at 30. And for Unalaska Island, southwest winds 30 to 35 knots tomorrow, seas as high as 17 feet. Umak Island, west-southwest 35, seas up to 18 feet. 30 to 40 knot winds for Adak and Atka. Out of the west, 8 to 19 foot seas. And Amchitka Island, west 35, seas around 20 feet. Kiska to Shimei, northwest at 30. Gale warnings for Shimei to Kiska on Tuesday. Southwest 35 knots. Amchitka Island west at 30 knots. Lighter winds for Adak and Atka. West 20 to 25 knots there. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands for northwest winds 25 to as high as 30 knots with seas up to 12 feet. Pribilofs, gale warnings. East winds sustained 40 knots. Seas up to 12 feet. Much lighter there for St. Matthew Island, northeast at 20. Same thing for the Yukon Delta coast, east at 20. Lighter winds yet for St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound, east northeast at 10 knots. Small craft advisories for the area south of Nunivak Island, there east at 25. And the outlook for Tuesday. Kuskokwim Delta coast, northwest winds 30 knots, seas 7 feet. Pribilofs west winds 20 knots, 6 foot seas. 25 knot winds out of the west for St. Matthew Island. And just west 15 for the Yukon Delta coast, south winds 20, 6 foot seas. St. Lawrence Island, northeast of 15 for Norton Sound. Up along the Arctic coast, winds will be out of the east the entire stretch of the coastline. 15 knots on the central coast, east side there. 10 to 15 knots, seas at 2 to 3 feet, and 10 knots on the west side. Variable winds 10 knots from Cape Beaufort to Wales. And then for the day on Tuesday, Wales to Cape Beaufort, east-southeast at 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Central, all of the Arctic coast, looking at east winds of 15 knots per uniform wind direction, wind speed, and wave height pattern up there, all identical. Seas 3 feet, winds east at 15. And for tonight, low pressure over the western North Slope or into the DeLong Mountains kicks off cloudy skies and snow showers scattered across that entire area up there, becoming mixed precipitation in toward the Norton Sound area. Next front, spreading gale force winds and rain into the Alaska Peninsula and Pribilofs tonight. Stays windy and wet over the Aleutians on the south side of that 987 millibar low. Increasing rain over the southern panhandle, dry over the interior. And for Monday, mostly sunny. Southern Alaska, variably cloudy with some breaks over the eastern interior, but not bad overall. Rain increases around Kodiak Island and Bristol Bay. Showers in the panhandle. Next system brings rain into the southeast coast toward evening. Otherwise, mostly sunny over the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.